I'm going to share with you the story of Doug Rauch and the Daily Table, which is one of my favorite case studies, especially for this module. It illustrates so many aspects of getting to know your customers and figuring out how your idea will work. So the problem that Doug Rauch set out to solve was the food desert. In the US, in urban areas, it's really hard to find fresh produce and healthy food. And this is really a paradox. So hunger in urban areas in the US and cities doesn't look like, really emaciated, starving people. It actually looks often like obesity, people getting empty calories from low-cost, unhealthy food, like basically junk food and fast food. And Doug Rauch wanted to do something about that. So he had some professional experience. He had experienced firsthand how to run a supermarket called Trader Joe's that he was the president of for like 20, 30 years. And Trader Joe's does provide healthy food, like fresh produce, fruits and vegetables and nuts and things like that. So he noticed a lot of opportunities in supermarkets, the way they work, and he thought maybe there could be a way to channel these opportunities to tackle the food deserts in urban areas in America. So I don't know if you've ever shopped at a supermarket like Trader Joe's. I had the opportunity to when I was a student in Boston, and I'd be like, checking out at the cashier, trying to buy an apple, and the cashier would say, "Oh, you sure you want this apple? It has a bruise on it." And I'd be like, "Yeah, it's fine. I chose this apple." And I'd pay for it and take it home. But what the cashier was asking me was, "Do you want me to throw this away? And do you want me to get another apple?" This happens a lot with perfectly good fresh produce. It also happens with like milk and cheese and bread and other products that people use day to day and week to week. When they get close to their best buy date, but they're still really good and healthy. They're nowhere near expired. And so Doug Rauch felt frustrated that there was a lot of wasted food. And this is actually an environmental problem, like it gets thrown away. And it's a social problem because you have food deserts. So he retired from Trader Joe's and tried to start a social enterprise that would recover the wasted food from supermarkets like Trader Joe's and provide it at low cost in low-income urban neighborhoods. Now, he had to do a lot of work in understanding his customers and iterating his idea. At first, his idea was that he would go around to supermarkets and tell them, instead of throwing away your food, donate it to me, and that way I'll have zero procurement costs and I can sell it for, low prices. That idea didn't work because his customers didn't like it and because it didn't work for branding. When he started talking to people about his ideas, it was all over the newspapers and the internet. Former president of Trader Joe's trying to sell other people's trash to poor people. That's how it was perceived, even though that was not the case. So he went back to the drawing board and he thought, what could be some other business ideas? And he ended up on a model where he would go to the places that wholesalers purchase from, like Costco's and Walmart and other low-cost retailers. He'd go to the source that they purchased from every morning super early after they were done and buy what's left for almost close to zero prices so that he could have a similar model and open the supermarket that he wanted. So that was one way that he iterated. And he really had to hone his narrative. So going back to the branding and promotion, like the words you use matter. So he realized a lot of us, when we talk about this problem, we talk about food waste. You've probably heard people talk about food waste, right? It's an environmental disaster, it's a social disaster. But there, the noun is waste, right? Food waste. If you just say wasted food, the noun becomes food. It's food that would otherwise be wasted. So he kind of changed the narrative from food waste to wasted food. It was also really important for him to develop his customer persona. And when he thought about his end user, who in this case is the same decision maker, is the same economic buyer, he realized in the neighborhood he was opening in, this was going to be a single working mother of color. And this is going to be someone who might have more than one job, more than one child or parent or other family member that they're the primary caregiver for, and that when that customer walks into their door at home, they are going to walk in at 6 p.m. and have food on the table. They need to have food on the table right away. They not only have limited financial resources, they have limited time. There was a study at Harvard that said that, for $2.50, you can feed a family a healthy meal, and you can compete with fast food. But what that study didn't take into account was the time it takes. You have to go find the legumes, and you have to soak them overnight, and you have to do this and this and that to them. It takes a lot of time to prepare healthy food, and it takes a specialized knowledge that many people don't have time to figure out. So he realized he needs to respond to poverty of time, money, and knowledge. He thought about how he's going to brand this to people. Is he going to focus on the recovered wasted food? Is he going to focus on the low cost? No, he needs to focus on taste and on convenience. And on that front, he iterated his idea further so that in addition to selling fresh produce, he would sell prepared meals. And he wanted to create a place that people would want to shop in, like Whole Foods, that is beautiful and inspiring and gives you a sense of dignity. Because his research showed that people don't want handouts. They don't go to food pantries and food kitchens. They want to feel that they have a choice and that they're providing for their family. So those are all the things that he had to convey in his branding. So if you think about the daily table and if you want to do a SWOT analysis, you could say some of the strengths that he had going for him was that he had industry knowledge. He had a great network to do fundraising because he registered this as a nonprofit, even though he was charging for the produce, but he wanted people to be able to donate. Another strength was that he was hiring from the community, creating jobs. And another strength was that he was finding a way to make this low cost, right? And, all that branding and positioning and getting to know your customer, these are all strengths. In terms of weaknesses, there were inherent weaknesses. He was not from the community. He had not been working in that community and with that community for a long time. So, it was a question mark whether he could build those relationships and build that trust. There was the time factor. There were a lot of other potential ways this could have gone, and other people competing for his customers' time. And he had to iterate his model for a long time. So at first, the IRS wouldn't even let him register as a nonprofit because he was a retail store. So there were a lot of minuses. And also, he had to find ways to keep his overhead low. So a bricks and mortar place like a grocery store is an expensive operation. So those were some of the weaknesses of his model. And then in terms of external opportunities and threats, there was the opportunity to focus on health equity. There were a lot of priority being given in policy and in the community on drivers of health, social and environmental determinants of health. So people wanted to support an enterprise that focused on nutrition as a driver of health. He was able to get a lot of support both financially and non-financially. For example, local universities helped him figure out what's healthy, what should he include on the menu. They also helped him conduct research to show is this working. He was able to raise funds to help build this and start it because people were prioritizing on health equity. But there were also threats. There are changing trends in consumption and the supply chain. During COVID, they suffered a lot. Other threats were just the competitors. There's so many opportunities for cheap fast food. So this wasn't the perfect idea. It had its strengths and weaknesses, and there were also opportunities and threats. And then there were a lot of political, economic, social, technological, environmental, legal, and other factors. And I've mentioned some of these, and my students and I wrote them out on the chalkboard in class. And then last but not least, my students kind of sketched out how would we put together a business canvas for a daily table. What's the central value proposition? What are the key activities and resources that he needed? The partners that might help him? And then what are his customer segments and the channels that he'll reach them? And how is he going to build those relationships? And the business canvas also asks you to start sketching out your costs and revenues. And we're going to go into those in more details in future modules, but this is an opportunity to really start kind of taking notes on what those might look like. So this module is going to take you more time than others have. As I mentioned, I use double the time to cover it in my class as other modules. So just take your time. The great thing about Coursera is that you can go at your own pace. And when you're ready, we'll move on to the next module where I'll talk about measuring outcomes. This is really the meat of social entrepreneurship and my favorite topic to talk about because it's the bottom line of social entrepreneurship and why we do it, to create social change. So think about how to develop your idea further. Talk to as many people as possible. Find ways of testing out different aspects of your idea to see how users might interact with it, the way Doug did with his samples. And then, when you're ready, I'll see you back here for the next module.